Right.
Okay, thank you.
And we should be
Thanks,
going
Mandy.
live now.
Thank you.
Right, welcome to the Marine Innovation Consultancy Grant Webinar Series. I would like to welcome you all to the session today. I'm just getting into my right slide. My name is Mandy Bowden. I'm the lead knowledge exchange officer on the Marine Business Technology Centre MBTC project, and I'll be your host for today. Just a reminder, we are you will only be hearing myself and our presenters today. We will not be able to see you or hear you. After the presentation, we will be holding we will be holding a question and answer session. You can raise your questions by putting them into the chat bar throughout the presentations as they come to you. And if you see a question from someone else that you are also interested in hearing the answer, then you can also like these questions. The webinar is being recorded with the intention that this will be available to other people on demand who haven't been able to attend this live event. What we're going to do is I'm going to introduce the MBTC project very briefly, focusing on the grant opportunity, and then we have two presentations from consultants who you might like to talk to about engaging, and their work would be applicable for a grant to yourself. So our speakers for today are Richard Greaves from Voomeroon and Charlie Young from SpiderCorp. And then after those presentations, we'll have the question and answer session. So a very quick introduction before my voice goes for the MBTC project. It's a innovation support project, so it's there to help and support innovation, so the design, development, test and proving of new ideas, new concepts, new products, particularly for the marine based industry. It's focused on supporting small businesses, SMEs in the Devon areas. The lead is Plymouth City Council, with research partners doing a lot of the delivery of the work from the two universities, Exeter and Plymouth, the Marine Biological Association and Plymouth Marine Labs. The project is funded by the European ERDF fund, and the project is providing free access to qualifying and eligible SMEs to the project equipment and expertise that has been brought together as part of the overall project. However, we did it when the application was put together. We did realise that not everything that a business might want or need on its innovation journey may be covered within the project. Hence, we have some funds to give out to support businesses access expertise outside the project, such as consultants, to help them on their innovation journey and the steps towards their own project goals. So the funding is available for consultancy engagement. Hence, we have a couple of consultants that are going to be presenting the sort of things that they can do to support your business later today. And we've had two consultants yesterday presenting, and we've got a few others in other sessions this week. The total fund is not enormous. It's of 120,000. And we're thinking possibly, because of the timescale of the project, probably small grants, but there is no maximum on the amount that you could apply for. Of your overall costs, 75% is covered by the ERDF fund through the MBTC project. There is minimal paperwork for the funding application, which is a real bonus to everyone, I'm sure. It really is 2 pages for the application form, and the second page is mostly signatures. So you're talking really 1 page, just quite straightforward questions that reflect the size of the budget and the speed at which we are hoping to help businesses. But we do also ask for a organisational needs analysis to be completed with either myself, the project director, or one of the partners' knowledge exchange officers. So we get to understand what your business is wanting and the overall, I suppose, innovation targets for your organization. So this would mean that maybe you're bringing a new product to market, but the actual bit of the consultancy grant you want is to help you with some, I don't know, some IP checking and securing. So to know the overall innovation of your project is important for us to be able to then assess your grant application for just the IP securing. We wanted to give some examples of the sorts of work that we can support under under the grant programme. So I've just listed a few of the sorts of activities that you might need to engage a consultant for. We had Blue Screen IT giving us a talk yesterday about cyber essentials, and also a marketing company, Fastnet Marketing, giving us a discussion about how they would approach a marketing campaign for a new product as well yesterday. So this is giving you an idea of the sorts of activities that could be that you could put in an application to us for a grant to help with the costs of engaging a consultant. And then timescale, we have got the grant scheme was open last week. We've already had a little bit of interest, which is fantastic. We've got a closing date of the mid-August. We are going to turn the decisions around on the applications very quickly within a week or so. And then we'll be informing all the successful and the outcome of the applications by the end of August, so projects can be engaged and delivered during this calendar year. Since the programme was put together, we have had agreement for a small extension of the project into next calendar year, but this grant programme we'll be working to these timescales, and we'll look at the future if there's any funds left at the end to do a second call potentially. So what would be the next steps for the grant application if you're interested in applying for a grant? Is contacting Rob Watson, the director of the project, or myself, the KEO for the MBTC project. You'll see that the picture of me there, which Rob pinched off LinkedIn, is pre-lockdown hair. It may look very different by Friday when I have had my hair cut, and I've gone a totally different colour. Anyway, these are the contact details for myself and Rob. If you're interested in taking a grant application further, we would work with you to undertake the organisational needs analysis and help you with the application. It then will get presented to us and a board from the partners in the project to make a decision on the on your application. And I am very happy to say that today we're going to hear from Richard about getting your project ready for grant funding, and then after that we'll be moving on to Charlie, who's looking at what steps you need to take for your sustainable innovation. We have other webinars later in the week, and we're also recording these so you can catch up on them at your leisure. So I'm just going to pop back to my screen. So Richard, if you would be so kind as to share your screen, I shall prepare your presentation to go on board.
Okay. So, with any luck, that's my screen.
Yep. Would you like to put it to grant ready?
Yeah.
Oh, it's grant ready. Gosh, I've got contact mind, haven't I?
Is that it? Is that sort of full screen?
Yeah, I'm just going to send it live so it's got your video next to that. Yes, you are now live. So thank you very much, Richard.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thanks first of all, to Mandy and Rob and the MBTC for asking me to speak at this webinar. It's a great opportunity. A story first, I think. A couple, 3 years ago, I met a guy who had a brand new idea, not at the cutting edge, but the bleeding edge, as they say, of his particular field. And his field was machine autonomy. And this guy was a proper academic, really seriously clever guy. He had his PhD, written papers, and all of that sort of stuff. And he was really experienced and well respected in his field. And he'd been working on his idea, his project, for months and months and months. He'd left his job, he'd eaten into his pension savings, and frankly, he was getting desperate. And he was getting desperate because he had no money, either to live on or to progress his idea any further. And that's what he wanted to do. So he considered raising some investment finance, but he didn't know where to start. He didn't know anybody who had deep pockets or anything like that. So he was a bit flummoxed there. He didn't want to give away his idea by selling it to somebody. And he also was sort of fairly scared about doing a pitch to somebody like Dragon's Den, because he didn't want to look stupid, as so often many people do on Dragon's Den. So he decided to apply for a grant, and he discovered something called the European Horizon 2020 Fund, and he set about filling in the application form, which is no easy task. Horizon 2020, it offers funding into the millions of pounds. This is a fund that serious large organisations apply to, as well as smaller organisations, and it's Europe-wide. Long story short, he was unsuccessful and his application was rejected, and he's now moved on to other things. A couple of months after I'd met him, I was at a meeting with a senior manager within Innovate UK. And this guy explained to me that in the UK, there are only about 2,000 businesses that have secured a Horizon 2020 grant. And the success rate of applications is less than 20%. So just think about that for a second. It's less than 20%, less than 1 in 5 of the applications, all the effort that people go to submit their applications, less than 1 in 5 is successful. So there's been well over 100,000 applications to Horizon 2020 across Europe. So the European Union were sort of fed up with this, and they decided to do some academic research into why the rate was so low. And this is what the research found. So applying for a grant isn't actually very difficult. Being successful is. And simply, the more money that you're applying for, the harder it is to actually secure a grant. So what is it that's going to give you and your business the best chance of success? Well, the first thing is all of us went to school, we all did exams, and irrespective of where we went to school or how good or bad our school was or how good or bad our teachers were, they all gave us the same advice before we went into the exam room. And that advice was very, very simple. It was read the question and answer the question. Don't answer the question you think they've asked. Make sure you read the question and answer that one. So getting a grant is about ensuring that you understand what the funding body wants to achieve, and explaining how your idea is going to help them achieve their objectives. It's not about you, it's about them. They are the customer and you are the supplier, and you have to meet their objectives. So you've got to think of it as a sales process. You need to understand your customer and satisfy their needs with your solution. And don't forget, these are customers who want to buy. They want to give you their money, but they'll only do that on their terms. So you've got your idea. You can see a long road ahead to a bright future, and you're hoping to be a millionaire by Christmas when you exploit your idea. It's good. It's a good idea. It's got great potential. You've talked to people about it in the industry or friends, colleagues, whatever, and they all agree. They think it's a good idea too. But at this stage, very early stage, it's only an idea. It's got to be developed and it may need to be refined. And then once it's been developed and refined, then you need to turn it into a thing, something that you can actually tangibly market and sell. And all of that costs money. But incidentally, you should always have your idea well thought through, even before you start to look for a grant. It's very easy to be tempted into seeing that there is a grant available and then trying to come up with an idea so that you can exploit the grant. That's the wrong way round. You've got to be proactive rather than reactive. Have your idea and then search for a grant, as opposed to searching for a grant and then trying to get an idea to fit. Anyway, you've decided to apply for your grant. You've found one that looks right. But the first thing they're asking for is match funding. And Mandy has already said earlier that she'll be looking for 25% match funding when you apply for one of these MBTC grants. So what is match funding and why do they want it? Well, again, very simply, funding bodies want to see that you're committed to your idea, and they want you to demonstrate your commitment by putting your hand in your pocket. That said, they also accept that if you're doing pure research and development, that can be expensive, and very, very early stage ideas or blue sky thinking might need more help than ideas that are closer to production. So blue sky, that might get you 100%. I've just finished a project with the European Space Agency, where the funding was 100% because it was a research project to look at options for improving the UK critical national infrastructure for position, navigation and timing in the marine environment. This is pure research. On the other hand, if you've got ideas that are nearer to commercial exploitation, they might only get 25 or perhaps 40% support. So in a different sector, for example, the agricultural sector, at the moment, DEFRA are giving grants for developing things like redundant farm buildings, for different commercial uses, and they're offering a 40% grant there. So you've got to find 60% of that yourself. So there's different levels of funding depending on where you are in the development cycle. Funders want to see that you've got some skin in the game, and they'll often refer to things called TRLs. So what is a TRL? A TRL is a technology readiness level. It's used widely in the scientific and manufacturing industries. And again, simply, a TRL indicates where an idea is on a 1 to 9 scale. 1 is the blue sky thinking, and 9 is a finished product or process, if that's what you're developing, pretty much ready for sale. Somebody can buy it and it's a tangible thing that they can use. So research projects like the marine position and timing, that would be around TRL 1 or 2, and you can find 100% for the right idea. If you've got a working prototype that's now ready for manufacture, you're going to be up at around the 7 to 9, the yellow sort of orange on the screen there. And it's likely you'll find, it's unlikely that you'll find money to develop your concept any further, but you might be able to find support for something like setting up a new factory. So there could be grants available for that rather than developing the concept. Most funding is for ideas ready for proof of concept or demonstration and prototype development, and they're really in the sort of the 3, 4, 5 and 6 area, perhaps up to 7. And again, funding levels will vary depending on the fund itself and the objectives of the fund. So why do organisations offer grants? A number of reasons, and those reasons will be explained somewhere in the application document or documentation. For example, we all know that the UK has got a political strong desire to remain as a member of the G7, and consequently it would continue to be a global influencer. And one way of doing that is to help people like you and me develop new innovative ideas, new technologies and so on, to remain right at the forefront. And so they might, for example, give you some money, some funding to develop something like autonomous vessels, for example, and it is only an example. The fund documents or the website will say quite clearly somewhere what the fund objectives are. Your job is to, as I said earlier, is to read the question and then answer it. So you've got to find the objectives and make sure that your application supports that. But the criteria can also give you a clue as to whether your application will actually succeed when you put it in. So let's say a funding body wants to create new jobs. Your application for a grant projects, let's say, 5 new jobs over the next few years. You won't get somebody investing hundreds of thousands of pounds in your idea if it's only going to create 5 jobs, and job creation is the purpose of one of the purposes of the grant. So make sure that you're applying for the right grant, and that your objectives are congruent with theirs. So it's not just, the grant isn't just about getting some money, but it's about 2 organisations working together with sometimes different but complementary objectives. The grant is going to come with a formal contract for you to sign up to. Now, this is very often published on the website or in the application documents, and usually they're set in stone. You don't have an opportunity to negotiate. There might be some things at the edge, like the timing of payments, how much money you might be able to get up front and so on, but the main terms and conditions are set in stone. So you, before you apply for your grant, read the terms and conditions and make sure that you're happy and prepared to sign up to them, because what you don't want to do, of course, is to put in weeks of effort completing a grant application only to find that you're unhappy to sign up to their terms and conditions, and they won't negotiate them either. So if you can't accept the T's and C's, pull out now. So the application process itself, you've got your idea, you've found a fund, you've read the terms and conditions, and so far you're happy. And now the size of the grant that you want is going to indicate how much effort you're going to have to put in to get it. So if you're applying for, let's say, more than 200,000, that's going to demand a more rigorous application than the 2-page one that Mandy's described for grants, around the £5,000–10,000 mark. You need to decide before you apply whether or not you've got the resources you need just to complete the application. It can be lengthy, it will be in depth, and it's more than likely going to ask you questions that you haven't thought of yet and that you don't have answers to. So simple stuff. Are you applying as a sole trader in your own right? Are you applying as a business, part of a consortium? If you're part of a consortium, who's the lead member of the consortium and who's going to hold the head contract? Are you going to name the other members of the consortium within the application? And so on and so on. And all of this is even before you need to get to decide to describe your idea or your project, or even articulate how much money you actually need. So what you need to do is put yourself in the position of the person who's going to approve your application. Can you provide them with sufficient detail to alleviate any potential concerns that they might have? Do you have a robust project plan that demonstrates how you're going to spend their money? Have you got the right team in place to deliver the project? Does your application deliver the outcomes that the funder wants their money to deliver? So do your objectives align with theirs? Can you get those two things together? And the application process itself can be lengthy and may have several stages. So at a simple level, Mandy's application has got two stages as far as you're concerned. One, you've got to go through an organisational needs analysis, and at that point persuade Mandy that you do have an organisational need, and then you've got to fill in an application form. If you're going for something which is significantly greater in terms of money, then the application process may have a lot more steps, and it can take, even after you've submitted an expression of interest, it can take up to a year to secure really high level grants. And that's, you know, just after you've done the first basic stuff. So it's hard work, can be hard work. So what's the application going to ask for? Well, typically there's going to be questions on company information. Who am I going to give my money to? That's what the funder wants to know. Who else is in the team? It tells a funder you've thought about the skills you need to support your project, and you may even have to name people and include a detailed CV for some of the key members of your team. Without solving a problem, your idea can't add value. So you've got to make sure that you've done sufficient research that you can describe the problem that you're trying to solve and why it's important to actually solve that problem. This is key. You need to describe exactly what you want to achieve in real depth. And your project plan and how you'll manage and deliver your project is going to give the funder confidence that you're not going to waste their money. You're a safe investment. That's what they're looking for, is some safety and security. It's really helpful if you know who your potential customers are and how much they'll pay. It gives confidence that you're a sound investment, and if you can get letters of support from potential customers, then that really adds value. But you're going to need you're going to need to develop a plan to capture the market, and depending on where you are on the TRL scale, including that might be a key part of your proposal. The nitty-gritty, the real nitty-gritty. How much is it going to cost overall, and how much do you want from the grant funder? Don't be shy. Don't be greedy, but certainly don't be shy. Be consistent throughout the whole process. If you start with a number, and there's several stages, then when you get to the end of the process, your number needs to be fairly similar to what it was at the start. Maybe a 10% variation would be okay. What you can't be doing is, for example, asking for or saying right at the beginning you're looking for 200,000 and then end up with an application asking for 400,000. It's problematic. And once you've agreed the amount, and once you've submitted your application and it's been approved, if there are any cost overruns, then they're your problem. They're not the funder's problem. You might be able to go back for some further funding, but it's unlikely you'll actually be successful there. I'm sorry. The match funding, what can that actually be? Well, match funding can be cash, it could be time, it could be another grant from somewhere else, it could be data that you've gathered before, it could be use of equipment, it could be company overheads, all sorts of things. You can be creative, but don't be tempted to invent a contribution, because actually that's fraud, and you certainly don't want to stray into that territory. So anything that you are doing with match funding, you've got to be, it's got to be real. Risks, well, something goes wrong in every single project at some point somewhere, and you can't predict what that's going to be. So you'll need to identify your principal risks insofar as you can, and you need to have some mitigations in place, and they need to be articulated in the application. So have you thought through what the risks are to your project and where it might go wrong?
Richard, we are over your eye. Are you just finishing, or are you?
I've got a couple. Two
okay. If you could,
I'll
bear in mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well, how can a consultant help? First of all, it's unlikely that you personally have got all the skills and the knowledge you need for a complex application. So you're going to need a team around you. So where could a consultant help? Money, get an accountant. They'll help you with things like VAT, applicability, with tax credits, with costing spreadsheets and so on. Can you write compelling copy? Can you write in an engaging style? That's going to help your application. Have you done the right research? You may have done it into your product, but have you done the market research? So there are opportunities there to get some support. Project management, that's where I add most value. Putting a bid together, depending on the size, can be a really challenging process, and it may be a skill that you don't have, especially if you're not used to project management. You've got to bring a team together to make it happen. Get some legal expertise, certainly with the contract terms, so that you're comfortable with the risks. And when you've finished your application, before you submit it, get somebody to give it a wire brushing for you. Have a good look to see if there are any flaws in it, and again, that's the sort of place I can help. So how much does it cost? It's worth investing at this stage of the application, because you're investing money to secure investment in your business, so it's worth doing. Rates, consultancy rates, depending on what you're after, depending on the level of skill of the individual, you can pay anything between £400 and £1,200 a day, depending on the nature of it. For a £2,000 grant, typically I'll do 3 days work spread over a couple of weeks. £10,000 gets you, I don't know, 3 weeks of support, and is more applicable to a larger grant. So to summarise, grants are a form of investment. If you're going to get one, you have to sell your idea. It is a sales process, no doubt about that. You are selling. You've got to find the right fund, and you've got to apply to. You've got to make sure that your application matches the fund objectives. Plan your project properly, understand the commercials before you go to any effort at all, understand the risks, treat the whole project seriously and get some support. The grants that Mandy's offering will get you up to around 3 weeks of consultancy support, not necessarily from me, but from other people with other skills and expertise. But above all, the one thing for you to do is to answer the question. My details are there on the screen. Any questions, then we've got the Q&A at the end, or indeed you can give me a buzz and I'll be happy to help out, and I'm sure I can in some way. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Richard. That's super. Charlie, if you'd like to unmute and share your screen, that's super duper.
Thank you.
We'll roll straight into yours.
Okay. Grand. Hi, my name's Charlie Young.
Can you just hang
sorry.
on 1 second while I get you? When I say roll straight into yours, hang on. Right, and send live. So we've got the right. Yes, so we've got you and your slides. Perfect. Thank you, Charlie.
Grand. Are my slides up? Because I can't see
yes,
my slides
they are.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you okay? You see everything you need?
I can see you and Richard. I can't see my slides for some reason.
If you click through, you should be able to get a screen that shows your slides as well.
Where's that? Sorry, this isn't happening.
If you say Alt tab through, you should find a screen that's got your presentation on there. It may be that you don't see your video as well at the same time, but you'll see your slides, and I can assure you that your slides and your video are live and looking absolutely spot on.
Grand. What I'm going to do, I'm going to briefly stop sharing and do it again, and it will come back up, and then I won't fiddle.
Certainly.
Bear with me. Share. Right. Does that come back up?
Let me just pop it in to be absolutely sure. That's looking good at this end.
Grand. Thank you.
Is that okay at your end?
Yep. All looking good. Yeah.
Fire away.
Grand. Hi, my name's Charlie Young. I run a small consultancy called SpiderCorp, which is based in Devon. I provide innovation support to businesses and to academia when they're basically trying to take ideas through to a project concept, or indeed even trying to fix a problem that they don't know exists. So what I want to do today is introduce you to a training method that I provide. I'm going to go over the basis of why this training method exists, and I'm going to use a very basic case study just to kind of give an example of how it works, rather than just giving you dry information, making it a bit more colourful and hopefully relevant to the sector that we're in today. Right. When a business is changing, it changes for a number of reasons. There's a new market need. They've identified they want to take a new product to market, or there's an in-house innovation that's been identified, it's come along rather serendipitously, and there's an appetite to commercialise it. Alternatively, it might be that the business is actually under pressure, externally or internally, and it has to transform, it has to change, and it needs to do it in a constructive way. So what we do at SpiderCorp, we do a one-day training course, and we're leveraging your skills. The essence here is to build on what you already do, and to do it well, and to apply it to the process of change, rather than you relying continuously on external support, which is costly, and often you don't actually get to keep the skills in-house. It's imperative, really, in these kind of processes, that change becomes an internal asset, not an external purchase, so to speak. So when it comes to change, what I've discovered over the years is there are three things that makes transformation effective. First of all, you need to understand what you're changing. What are the needs? And what's the impact of what you're going to do, or what you aspire to do, on your staff, on stakeholders internally and externally, and your customers? By understanding them, you start to see where the fit actually is with what you're doing and the benefit you're going to realise. There's often an issue with industry of people buy some technology and think it's just going to fix a problem, and they go around looking for a problem. That can happen. It can be rarely effective. It's a very costly way of doing things, and quite often you never want to look at your technology aspect until you really understand what it is that you're doing. Technology is not the solution. Technology is just the means to transform. The final part is, how are you going to make it sustainable for your business? People talk in the lingua of business model canvases. So these are mechanisms that are visual. They help you understand what you're doing and how it's going to change the business, how it's going to benefit the business, but also how that's going to influence your market. It's very important to do those things, and quite often it can be overlooked. The main thing to understand about this, though, is that these are interrelated. They're not standalones. You can't achieve one without the other. And overall, one of the things that is often overlooked is that when you look at these three things in concert, you also need to really appreciate the system that they all exist within. And the training that we provide helps you understand the system as well as these three components. So here we go. So hopefully you can see that on the screen. It's just a bit smaller font, but I'm going to take you through the process. It's 8 steps. So essentially, you go into this process with a problem, something you want to solve. The first step is this analysis. How do you know that the problem really exists? You've got to understand, even if it's just your own perception or your business's perception, that there's a problem there. But conversely, you also need to understand what's the value of solving that problem. It can't just be a good idea if you're going to invest money into it. You need to see the cost benefit or appreciate there's a cost benefit from your efforts. Moving forward from this point, you then start to understand or assess the system that this operates within. So in a very simple term, if you're operating a boat, your system is both going to be the boat, but also the water, the region, whether that's coastal or inland, where that boat operates. There's interacting forces and relationships that exist within that system, and therefore you also need to understand your stakeholders in this system, your customers, other organisations who might be doing similar things, or other organisations whose livelihood, whose operations might be affected by what you do. By bringing that full system together, you get to this point 4, the integrated viewpoint. It's a bit wordy, but essentially you've got layers now. You've got your issue or your idea. You've got a system that you can look at, and you've got the stakeholders. And as you start to look at this information, certainly through the training that we do, you'll start to see where there might be some obvious sweet spots, some opportunities where you can see how your problem can be solved. And the chances are you'll see more than one solution bubbling up to the surface. And that's the great thing about these kind of processes. There's no single solution to fix a problem. There are multiple ways to do it. The more ways that you come out with is better, because you get more opportunity to play. And also you start to identify what's more relevant for you now, what's more relevant for you in the future. These could be driven by factors of cost, resource, skills, and so forth. Up to this point, this has all been very much an internal process where you might say it's all been a bit of noodling. It's based on perceptions and opinions within the organisation. And this is the point where actually you need to start doing some validation. You can't go forward towards any kind of project based on assumptions. You need to validate what you're doing and what you understand. So step 6 is the stakeholder research. This is something that might be a bit uncomfortable for some organisations to do, because basically it means going out and asking people's opinion. How does your business or your action or your intentions affect them? How might it benefit? How might it benefit them? How might it influence the way that they do things? You could be talking to customers. Your research can include staff. It can also include other bodies, organisations within the region that are affected by what you do. They're your system stakeholders, so you've already identified many of these. But as you do this research through these interviews or surveys, they will start to suggest other people, other organisations you can talk to. So you start to build this very, very coherent web of knowledge coming out of all these people. And that takes you really to step 7, which I've called the final countdown. So this is where you've got this huge mishmash of very, very well prepared information. You've done your stakeholder research, so you know really the validity of all your sweet spots now. You've harnessed a lot of intelligence there. And if anything, you've probably still got a few too many options on the table to move forward, because you can't deliver all of those projects at once. It's never wise, and it's going to be too costly and time consuming. So you have to prioritize. And at this point, you've got to work out a prioritization that works for your business. It might be about the resource, it might be about the costs invested into the project. It might be really identifying what could be one thing that gives you the best gain at the moment, so that other projects in the future could flow from that point forward. And at that point, this is really where our process stops, because we're not here to train in project management or how to design and deliver projects. What we do is help you identify what you're going to do within those processes that hopefully you already have in-house anyway. So we come out of this with identifying probably 1, possibly 2 or 3 other ideas that you feel comfortable with taking forward. And apart from obviously conducting the stakeholder research, this is pretty much a training process that can be delivered in 1 day. Now, having gone through this in a very dry and probably quite boring fashion, I can appreciate that, I want to make it a bit more colourful for you. So Mandy's suggestion, I've put together a case study. This is one I've made up, so this might be relevant to you, you might appreciate it. Hopefully it makes sense, and that's the most important part, because I want to use this case study now to go through the process again, so you can start to see a bit more colour, put a bit more flesh on the bones there. This is probably atypical to Devon. Hiring leisure craft as some form or function, 2 tourists who really just want to play around in their boat and perhaps have had a couple of tins of beer in the process. So there's always the risk of things being damaged. Fishermen on the coast, on the rocks, being annoyed, seal colonies be disturbed, or even worse than that, banging your leisure craft into a rock and damaging it. And for argument's sake, let's say that there's 10, 20 events of these a year, and there's a cost to the business. So you know what the impact is from doing this. And your idea is that you want to reduce these problems by half, so that you start to sort of reduce the outgoings on insurance and on dealing with irate fishermen over the following season. So we look into our process. So we know what the cost impact is. You've already understood there's a problem there, but there might be other problems that exist. And so as you sit down and work with your colleagues, with your staff, and look through it, you'll probably bring a few other issues to the table now. So now you really know the gravitas of what you're dealing with. You really understand the pain it causes your staff when fixing these boats and dealing with angry fishermen, as well as having the marine laboratories having a go at you about unhappy seals. So what we need to do now is saying, okay, we understand the problem, we understand the breadth of the problem, let's go and look at the system where this is affected. So we've got a coastal area where your boats are being leased. There's the marine environment, there's the coastal environment, there are beaches. National Trust might be involved because they might own some of the land where your pleasure craft go by. And there's going to be other tourist craft involved in this as well. This picture of the system is really important, because the more detail that helps you understand the system, the more benefit you're going to be able to derive when you fix the problem later on. Now, within the system, as I said, you've got stakeholders, you've got your customers, your staff, you've got local businesses, you've got the Coast Guard, I'm sure, you've got marine regulations, you've got the population, council, insurers. Everyone plays a little bit of a part. It might not be relevant to all, but it's always worth mapping out who they all are. Combined, this picture of the system and these stakeholders and your knowledge of the problem, you're going to start to see little bits bubble up to the surface that you didn't appreciate before. You'll start to even get an idea of things that you could fix. And this is probably where you start to get a bit excited. And this is where you need to keep a lid on the excitement. It's great to have those ideas and to generate them and keep track of them, but we're still not in solution mode just yet. So we need to take that viewpoint, identify these sweet spots without judging them, just gathering them all together, and then flip this over into the knowing the stakeholders. This is where you need to go out and talk to the marine regulators, the Coast Guard, the council, local population and businesses and fishermen and so forth, and find out really what are their pain points around your leisure craft. Do they really cause them a problem? Were they aware that they're a problem? And what do they do in compensating for when problems occur? This is where the intelligence that comes out of this research really starts to count, because as we go into the final countdown, your picture of the system, the stakeholders, and their feedback on your problem and the ideas that they are already dealing with, or the approaches they're dealing with to solve your problem, perhaps on their side of the fence, is going to start generating a list of things that you could do. It might be that you come out of this project saying there's a very simple step going forward. There might be a technical solution. You might come up with sensors as an idea to fix the problem. It really doesn't matter, but you will come up with a whole bunch of ideas coming out of this. And your hardest task in all of this process is actually, how do you prioritize all those ideas, those concepts, so that you can start to deliver any one of them going forward, knowing how much you're going to have to spend on this and how much time it's going to take to get it to market. And as you do this, once you start a project and you deliver it, you'll look at the next season and say, well, that was great. We have reduced it by half. What are we going to do this year? The great thing is the intelligence, all this data you've gathered, is still going to be fairly relevant for the next 1 to 2 years. So you could look through it again through new eyes. You've solved part of the problem. What problems still exist? How do your stakeholders and how does your community in this system feel now because of what you've done? What new issues has this raised? What new benefits has it generated? So you start to evolve around this, and this is both a business benefit, as you can appreciate, but also your system benefit that you're introducing into it. So you're helping others as well as helping your business gain and benefit from making those transformations. So I hope that it's a bit of a fly through. It's I appreciate you probably taking on a few new concepts that perhaps you haven't come across before, but I hope that this makes sense and it comes across in a kind of using a sort of case study format that is also reasonable to the sector. If you'd like to talk about the kind of projects that we can get involved in, how I might help with a training of this nature or support you doing your own innovations internally, of course you've got my contact details here, and through Mandy and through Robert, the Business Centre. And if anyone's got any questions, of course, I'd be happy to answer them online now. Thank you, Mandy.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Charlie. That's all very interesting, that sort of concept of arriving at your own solutions and being facilitated from an external. It's almost like picking the answers that are there out of the organisation, and then bringing them to the forefront. It seems straightforward and simple, but I bet you have some interesting conversations. Yeah, super,
it has
duper.
its moments.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Super. Thank you. I shall just have a look, see if we've got any. I don't think we've had any questions raised today, so they must have been very informative presentations. I think what I would like to just sort of ask Charlie first of all is sort of what is the time scale of going through this sort of process with a business? What is a typical sort of activity? You said that, like, the day you would do a training day, and obviously the research to the system stakeholders takes a bit of time, but what timescale are we looking at?
So to do the training, what we'd normally do is we'd conduct the entire process as a training session during a day, because at the end of the day you can mimic that stakeholder research, because there's, in terms of the stakeholder research, we teach different methods about how to gather that information. So this is, so conducting structured interviews, running surveys, looking for other alternative means to gather feedback from people. So we don't break the system in order to train. It's entirely feasible to do it between a half a day and a full day, depending on the number of people getting involved in it. But then what we can also do is saying, okay, now you've learned the process and you want to go and apply it to a project, whether they need additional facilitation to support going through that process a first time is always there. But the ideal is hopefully that they learn enough from doing the training that actually they can go and step into their own project and go and conduct all the research and analysis themselves.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And Richard, would you like to comment on, say, the typical amount of time that you spend with a business? You're still on mute at the moment, but maybe the when you're assisting a business looking for their grant and project managing that whole process, how long does that take?
Well, unfortunately, it's a piece of string. The process of finding the right grant, there are a number of websites or grant finding services available, and you can subscribe to those, and you'll get an email that says such and such a grant is coming up. So, for example, Innovate UK, probably certainly once a month, probably more often than that, they send an email that says we've got the following calls coming up, and these are grants that are open at the moment. So that information is there. That doesn't take long to find the grants themselves. The actual application process, it really does depend on the complexity of the grant. So I'm looking at one with an organisation at the moment. Now this is big stuff. They're looking at a grant, believe it or not, of 5 million quid, and that's going to take us round about 9 months to go from the let's go and apply through to the final submission. And then after the final submission, then there's a negotiation. Because of the sums of money, there will be a negotiation with the provider. So that's at one end of the scale. But at the other end of the scale, I did a piece of work with an organisation called CFAS, which is part of the Marine Management Organisation, and this is the Seafood Innovation Fund. They've got monies available at the moment. We put a proposal together for, I guess, round about 300,000, of which they will fund 250, and that's taken, in elapsed time, probably 2 months to put it together. in actual time involvement from me, probably a week. So
Okay.
something like that. But
Yeah.
you know, there's been a
horses for courses a bit.
Say again.
Horses for courses.
Indeed, it depends on what skills you've got. You know, if you've got if you've done it before, if you're great with spreadsheets, you know, then crack on. If you're not great with spreadsheets, then you may well need to get somebody in who is. I think the real point is surround yourself with good people.
Yeah. Okay.
And make sure. I mean, the stuff that Charlie's been talking about there. If you're applying, you've got to his step 8, I think. You know, your project bit. If you can then articulate the process that you've been through to get to your idea, and now you're looking for funding to support that. Happy days. You know, that's great. That's what funders want to see. I've really done my work here. I know what I'm talking about. That's fantastic stuff.
Brilliant. Okay, we have a few questions that have come through now. I think there's a little bit of a delay on the in these coming through, so apologies. I'm just going to pick up on Oriel Butcher's question. She says, he says, Richard mentioned there's match funding can come from other forms, time, previous data, etc., and asks whether that's the case for the grants that are available through the MBTC. Unfortunately, no, that's not the case for these. How it works is if you're going to engage a consultant, for example, I use easy figures, £10,000 worth of work. You would let us know about that. We would go through the criteria, and if that's successful, you engage the consultant, they deliver the work for the £10,000. You then evidence that to the MBTC, and we refund you the 75% of that, so £7,500. That's just using my maths, very simple maths, so I don't get in a mess on that. But obviously it's scaled up and down depending on how much you would be looking for. So we're actually using as a matched funding. So your skin in the game is your proportion, your 25% of the costs of paying for the consultant interaction that you need for your business. So hopefully that answers the question. There's another one about what are the main criteria for the MBTC grant. So the eligibility for the MBTC grant are twofold. One is on the applicant. So the applicant needs to be Devon-based SME. And then it's what the applicant wants to do with their work. So the project that they're supporting needs to have some innovation within it. So whether that's using a new technology, or whether it's new to that business, or whether it's new to sector, innovation would have to be assessed. But it has to have some marine focus. That's what we're all about. Whether it's collaborative, that will help with the assessment. Whether the proposed project is judged as sustainable, and what their economic impact on is. And the assessment criteria is that all will be assessed by the MBTC Knowledge Exchange Officer panel, consisting of all the partners in the project. And we'll be looking at innovation, deliverability within the timescale, the sustainability and the impact of the overall project or activity that your business is undertaking, the value for money of the consultancy work, the strategic fit with the MBTC aims, and then the overall support of all the partners within the project. So I hope that helps. There's another couple of questions. I'm going to rattle through these. There's one for Richard. What are the main types of sectors that you are supporting? Richard?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. My experience is in senior management, general management. I've worked in a number of different types of business. So that's the skill set that I'm bringing. The specific sectors, well, mainly the marine sector at the moment, but historically, you know, in the last 5 years, I've delivered an organisational change project. I've delivered a research project with the European Space Agency. I spent 6 months in Australia with a facilities management project. So I think what I'm saying here is that the skills that I'm bringing, and most consultants bring, to be honest, are not necessarily sector specific. What you're buying into is people who have good experience at a process or at a type, a style of management or something, and applying that to your business. And the benefit there to you is that you're getting knowledge from a number of different sectors, and that cross-sector knowledge adds real value to businesses that are in a growth or innovation stage. But at the moment, the focus is marine and maritime. But yeah, it's any sector. Yeah,
brilliant. And Charlie, would you like to add what sectors you work with at the moment or have experience in? You're on mute at the moment, but so if you'd like.
Yes.
Oh, you've gone back to mute. I think you must have double pressed it.
My fingers are too fast for my own good. I'm an engineer by profession, mechanical engineer. I used to work, and I've returned to working in the space industry. But I've also got a lot of experience working in the healthcare sector, and I've been doing a few kind of early projects in the maritime sector as well in the last year. So quite broad. I tend not to think about sector as a sort of divisive factor, because certainly around innovation, kind of there's a broad-minded appeal about not being too knowledgeable about what you're dealing with, and that's kind of how I position myself.
Fantastic, thank you. Super. Okay, well, we've just gone over the hour, so I'll be closing the live event. I just wanted to say a last thank you to our super presenters, Richard and Charlie, today. And of course, if you want to be in contact about the grants or the consultants, if you've got any particular queries for the consultants that you've heard from today, then do get in touch. We're really looking forward to hearing from you and taking your ideas forward. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much, presenters.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.